Okay, before we go on with questions, just let me welcome here Laura Trevelyan and Patrick Worsnip, chief correspondents for BBC News and Reuters. I won't go through their very long curriculum. I'd say that the three of them now here have a common Italian connection, and I just found out that Laura had something to do with Italy since her grandfather is the famous historian who wrote about Garibaldi. So Rome is definitely in his history. And then Patrick has been also working in Rome twice, if I'm not wrong. So we just had one question asked, and then we can go on. And I don't know if you want to say something before they go on and put questions to you. Maybe you can just say something if you want, or you just want them.
Let's start with questions.
Okay. Please.
Okay, Nicole.
Good afternoon. I would like to know which are the criteria used in order to select news and informations.
Which are the criteria
used in order to select news or informations?
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Man.
The criteria on which we select news and information. I would say that in covering the United Nations, a global news organization such as Reuters, for which I work, or the BBC, for which Laura works, probably is at something of an advantage in the sense that almost anything that happens at the United Nations is of interest to somebody in the world. There is always a customer, always a client for virtually all stories that happen at the United Nations, no matter how obscure it may seem to other people. To that extent, we are perhaps at an advantage over, say, Richard or the correspondent of another American news organization or a single country news organization. I think Richard would probably agree, and perhaps has been telling you just now, that the visibility of the United Nations is rather low in the United States at the moment.
The streets of the United States.
Well, Patrick is forgetting we have an international channel.
That is true.
What I really, most of my material is, this is what happens when you work at the UN. Your vision, your thought process can start to get a little tired because the nature of the place, all of the speeches and everything. But Patrick has to churn out wire copy and reports for so many different clients. He can never rest. I mean, if the Security Council gives a statement about Haiti, CNN is probably, unfortunately, going to say, no, we don't need it. We'll wait until the presidential palace is burning. But he has to churn it out. And CNN anchors will rely on his story to then do a 10-second reader on the air. So we do rely on Patrick a great deal.
Okay. Yeah, we do too. So yeah, I mean, it's a similar thing. The BBC has 33 language services for the radio, as well as English language, international and domestic channels for television and radio. So what Patrick said is true. You know, no matter how obscure the topic, whether it's Ethiopia, or obscure if you're a European, whether it's Guinea-Bissau or Ethiopia and Eritrea, there'll be a home for it somewhere. So a lot of my work is translated by the language services, which sometimes can be an alarming experience, I have to say.
I mean, was your question also, how do we choose between all of this?
Yeah.
That can be...
Yes, again, I mean, this is to a certain extent determined by the nature of the organization that we work for and its particular interests. It has to be said that there are some correspondents at the United Nations who essentially really only focus on the internal workings of the United Nations, and particularly any cases of wrongdoing, corruption, or similar things by people in the United Nations, because that is really all that their employers are interested in terms of coverage of the United Nations. They don't care so much about Security Council resolutions about parts of the world about which they know little.